Where's Hartwell? Okay. Hey, Rob Browne here with you on this Monday edition of Sidelines, College Football and Basketball Blitz. A lot to talk about, and what a weekend. But, man, there's been some sad news at the University of Georgia, and we were going to address that here in just a moment with Tony Barnhart. And we'll be joined by John Hartwell as well in just a moment. Doug Dean in the second segment will join us, AU Dose out of Birmingham. Top of hour number 2, Johnny Ballpark Franks checks in from Nashville, the big picture of college football. And we will be on with the fourth segment, Franz Beard, GatorbaitMedia.com, the Iron Duke. Always interesting to get his thoughts, but we are with you every Monday through Saturday, 2 hours every day. And check us out if you miss us. Of course, you can hear us on the www.sidelines.live. Live anywhere, sync it in your car, truck, SUV, your boat. Anywhere you are. I got a lot of guys that listen in the duck blind. That's pretty fun. But we are also on 680thefan.com, the podcast park over in Atlanta. And you can find us on Kicks 96.3 and WLIV 104.7 in Cookeville, Tennessee. We're slowly but surely building this Sidelines Southern Sports Network. Follow us on Twitter at sidelines_live. And Tony Barnhart, Mr. College Football, is John Hartwell. John Hartwell is with us right now. And John, we should be joined in just a moment by Tony Barnhart, and he will be on with us as well from Atlanta, Mr. College Football. But sad news, man, about what happened at the University of Georgia. A football player and a member of the recruiting staff were both killed, and 2 others were injured in a car wreck early Sunday morning. And also really awful news out of Tuscaloosa, and we'll talk about that as well. But John, let's get your take on it. Can imagine as an athletic director, the phone rings in the middle of the night after midnight. It's usually not a good call.
Yeah. Good morning, Rob. Good to be on with you today. And it's first and foremost to the Willock family, to the LaCroix family, to the others that were injured in the automobile accident. Unfortunately, it looks like they're going to be okay in the long run. To the University of Georgia football family, to anybody involved in college athletics, you see these things, and it's a very strong reminder how fragile life is, and just a sad thing. And like you mentioned, just across the way in Tuscaloosa, almost at the same time, which was tragic. There was a shooting on the strip there, not far from campus in Tuscaloosa.
Yeah,
and ultimately, University of Alabama basketball player gets arrested and charged with capital murder. So yeah, I know we've said this before, and sometimes it's taken in jest, but there's a lot of truth to that. Nothing good happens after midnight, and tough situation. Again, first and foremost, the thoughts and prayers go out to the families, because all of us that are parents, we have kids, and oftentimes you learn from your mistakes. But unfortunately, when fatalities are involved, for those young people, the loss of life is tragic regardless. But in these young people who had so much in front of them, really tragic. And the important thing is now to take care of those families, but to learn from those mistakes as well, and try to prevent these things going forward.
Yeah, and news came out yesterday, and then of course at the same thing, the awful news out of Tuscaloosa. Man, just everything is happening. It's a Sunday holiday weekend, and just bam. But yeah, I know as an athletic director, you had 570 student athletes most recently at Utah State, and then you think about every single one of them. Any call that comes in, you're going to get that call. Tony Barnhart should be joining us here in just a moment. College football over in Atlanta. John, this past weekend, basketball wise, want to get to it. We got a lot we're going to cover today. Tony gets on. I want to talk to him about Georgia and that situation. But I look at the basketball, lineup for Saturday's games, and this is what happens. We're talking about Kentucky. Kentucky is struggling, and something was brought up that this is the most experienced team in terms of age that John Calipari had, and bam, they go in there and beat Tennessee. But we'll get to that in a minute. I want to go. Tony Barnhart had a technical difficulty there, and Mr. College Football, the media guides over in Atlanta. Rob Browne, John Hartwell with you, and we wanted to talk about the Georgia National Championship. I know you had a wild week out in Los Angeles, but as we just mentioned a minute ago, John having most recently been an athletic director the last 8 years at Utah State, what it must be like, and our prayers are with the Georgia family and the families of those two that died. But it's just a terrible news, and we're all parents, and you never want to get that call.
Well, it's a reminder. Somebody came up to me at church yesterday and just, is a huge Georgia fan, and he says, I'm heartbroken. I said, it shows you again, as if we didn't already know and didn't need to be reminded how fragile life can be.
Yeah.
And how things can change. And so it was a wonderful celebration in Athens, wonderful week in Los Angeles, but then suddenly the world changes, and we certainly pray for the families of those two young people. One was Devin Willock was only 20 years old. Chandler McCoy, she was only 24 years old. And as you said, Rob, if you're a parent, that's of all the phone calls you never want to get, that's the one. And very sad.
Yeah. I mean, I've got them 22 and 24, 26 and 34. I can't even imagine. I saw that. John Hartwell, you're on with Tony Barnhart. And again, in your role, I hope you never did get that call.
Well, I actually did when I was the AD at Troy. Had a student athlete pass away in a tragic automobile accident. So yeah, if you're in this business long enough, unfortunately, these things happen. And again, like Tony said, first and foremost, prayers to the families, prayers to the Georgia football and athletics community. This touches so many people, and you think about running literally the gamut from last Monday night, the euphoria of winning a national championship, Saturday, a great celebration in Sanford Stadium, to this news, 8-10 hours later is really tragic. And as an athletic director, just like being a coach, you're a surrogate parent to those young men and women on the rosters of your sports. And, the one thing, and again, with foremost thoughts to the families, you have to ask those hard questions. You have to say, hey, at 2:45 in the morning, what were two student athletes doing out with two staff members? What was the circumstances because those families of those student athletes are going to ask those questions. Others are going to ask those questions. And, Josh Brooks is a tremendous professional, one of the young stars in this business. But, there's a backside to all of what the public sees in this, that questions are going to be asked. And just like questions are going to be asked in Tuscaloosa, again, another very unfortunate situation, but, a University of Alabama men's basketball student athlete charged with murder. And, the one thing I've seen a lot of chatter back and forth. And again, I dealt with these situations too. If you have a student athlete where the preponderance of the evidence, and again, an athletic director or a university is not the judge and jury, but if you have a situation like this, that's pretty, the preponderance of evidence shows, that they're involved in a major, a crime like this, it is pretty standard practice, like Greg Byrne did, to remove that individual from the roster almost immediately.
Yeah. Tony, I don't know what else you know about that situation, but it's unusual to have this. I mean, it's awful for these campuses.
Oh, it is. I don't really know anything about it. I guess I thought about the Baylor situation when that cropped up several years ago, and yeah, it's a tough position for an athletic director to be in. But John's right. Greg Byrne is one of the top professionals as an athletic director, and it's pretty clear what you have to do once, as John said, the preponderance of the evidence is there.
Yeah, Tony, and all that being said, and what happened out in Los Angeles, remember you were on a couple of weeks ago, right before the game, and I told you, I saw on Twitter, someone said, is Georgia considered a blue blood? Now, as an Auburn man, I'm like, hell yeah, they are. I mean, I don't have to hit me on the head, but they win it again, and the way they won it, and people are like, David Pollock, he said, hey, they have wrestled control of college football. They have. There's nothing wrong with that. And Nick Saban, I mean, sure, he's a competitor, but I thought that was a great thing because Georgia right now is the king of college football.
They are. And what's going to be really interesting is what happens now. I mean, we can all talk about how do things stand. Yeah, but the interesting thing is what happens next.
Yeah.
What happens next? What happens? Does Nick Saban have another run left in him? That's the question I have. After number one recruiting class, you'd say, yeah, he probably does. And so what is going to happen in the next 2 to 3 years is what's going to be fascinating.
Yeah, and that when you look at the recruiting, if Georgia basketball ever figures out a way to tap into that Metro Atlanta pipeline of basketball talent, we're all going to be fighting for second. I mean, it's just, right. I mean, and includes Kentucky. But Tony, Georgia football, this is another one. How would you address when people say, because I know a lot of Georgia fans, that 1980 to 2021, 41 years they wandered in the wilderness. That narrative needs to be wrestled away because, again, I'm fair, but I look at it and I go, Georgia's the 9th or 10th winningest team in the history of college football. They won a ton of games from 1980 to 2021. I think the 6th or 7th most of anybody in America.
Mm-hmm. Well, and you have to also look at it. You can't just say, okay, they haven't won a national championship in 41 years, therefore they got a problem. Let's go back and look at that. Okay. 2002 with David Pollock and David Green and all those guys. That was a great football team. David Green didn't play against Florida. 2012, Aaron Murray at quarterback. Georgia drives the length of the field against Alabama in the SEC championship game. The winner of that game is going to play Notre Dame for the national championship, and whoever it is, Georgia, Alabama, is going to win.
Yeah.
The game ends with Georgia at the Alabama 5-yard line. Okay, when a pass got tipped and caught. 2017, Georgia leads in overtime against Alabama. Tua comes off the bench and becomes Tua, and Alabama deserved the win. But the point is, Georgia had been in this position several times in that span and did not close the deal. And of course, 2 years ago they did. So you have to put those kind of things into context. But the fact of the matter is Kirby Smart was brought to Georgia to happen, for these moments to happen. Yeah. And he was given the backing of the administration completely, financially and otherwise. And so credit Kirby Smart and his staff and the entire Georgia organization for putting this together. And again, the fun part is going to be what happens next.
Yeah. Stetson Bennett, I think he plays in the NFL, John Hartwell.
Yeah, I do too. And that's a great lead in for me, Rob. Again, people say he's too small. He's too slow. His arm strength isn't enough. All the guy does is wins. What I would love to hear Tony give is his perspective, obviously, with many years of knowledge of this. If you can kind of put in perspective what the legacy of Herschel Walker, which is obviously unbelievable, versus the legacy of Stetson Bennett, because I think Stetson, if not, has put himself on an equal playing. You know, he clearly has established himself with back-to-back CFP championships and what he's done as you know, one of those pillars of Georgia football.
Well, John, it's an incredible legacy. Obviously, 29-3 as a starting quarterback, 2 national championships, 4 college football playoff games, MVP in all 4. Kind of hard to beat that. Okay, in just a 2-year span, 2.5-year span that he's been the starting quarterback. Yeah, people get hung up on looking at Herschel Walker's the best football player I've saw. I mean, he period. It's a really different metric when you're talking about what the guy has accomplished on the field. Herschel played on 3 SEC championship teams, one that won the national championship, one that lost to Penn State for the national championship. So Herschel has a great record there, but it's really 2 different metrics. And the great story about, but here's the story of Stetson Bennett, guys. I'm giving a speech in Orlando tonight, and I'm going to tell them this, and I'll share it with you. Go back to the Georgia-Florida game, not of this past season, not of 2022, but of 2021. At that time, at the Georgia-Florida game of 2021, Georgia was 7-0, ranked really, really high. Stetson Bennett had become the starting quarterback, and people were very optimistic. At a tailgate in 2021 at the Georgia-Florida game, a Georgia fan came up to me and said, "Tony, you do realize that there is no way we are winning a national championship with Stetson Bennett as our quarterback."
So, Tony, can you hold that thought for 1 second? We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back.
Hey, y'all. It's Ainsley from Hewlett & Dunn, just coming to let you know about our new collection of boots. It's going to be our dress boots. They're the Horsepower collection, and they're genuine exotic leathers and really comfortable. Comes in all different sizes and patterns, so come check them out.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Rob Browne with John Hartwell, Tony Barnhart. Tony, you're telling the story about Stetson Bennett in the parking lot at the Gator Bowl down there, Florida-Georgia game. I don't want to hear the rest of this. This is good.
Well, the fan came up to me, and again, this is 2021, not 2022, over a year ago, and he said, "I'm just telling you, Tony, we can't win a national championship with Stetson Bennett as our quarterback. We'll never beat Alabama. There's no way." I said, "Dude, I don't know that at all." And obviously, Georgia goes on, loses to Alabama in the SEC championship, but comes back to win in the national championship game. All right, so Stetson Bennett's got a national championship. The following June, I'm speaking to a Georgia group, the Terry College of Business at Georgia, young alumni. And I give my little presentation and this. I did pick Georgia to repeat as national champions. Then we got to the Q&A, and the third question in the Q&A was, "Yeah, Tony, that's all well and good, but you do know we can't win another national championship with Stetson Bennett as our quarterback."
God.
And I went over to the side and beat my head on the wall for a minute there. But that's Stetson Bennett. I mean, nobody. There were people who did not believe in the guy until he was standing up there with 2 national championship trophies. Then they believed in the guy.
Yeah. Well, Lauren Smith is on with us a lot, and Lauren talked about when he went to Blackshear, everybody there for a book signing. What do you got, Lauren? Everybody up there wanted to talk and tell a Stetson Bennett story. And it's a great story. Tony, listen, I know you got a busy day ahead. We didn't mean to keep you long, but always are so grateful for you taking time to join us, especially on a Monday morning. But, there's just nobody like Mr. College Football. Please let people know how they can follow you, keep up with all your great work, and we look forward to your next visit.
Well, our website is TMG College Sports. It's under the SI.com umbrella. It's SI.com/college/TMG. TMG stands for the Media Guides, and my 3 business partners. We've had a lot of fun with it this season. So all the content that we wrote from Los Angeles and during the season is right there. We did a podcast to finish up the season. We did that the other night, and that's been posted there. So.
All right, looking forward to it. I'm going to go back and listen to it today. But again, have a great week, Tony. Look forward to the next visit.
Okay.
Take care, Tony.
All right. I'm going to tell you one thing. Tony Barnhart telling that story about Stetson Bennett. I think Tony's one of the best writers in college football, and just has a way of putting things in the vernacular, John. And that was a great question from you about Stetson Bennett. And I'm one of these people that I go back to a story. I was listening to Admiral McCraven speaking at the University of Texas, May of 2014. He talked about that he was in the Navy for like 37 years, long time with the SEALs, SEAL teams commander. He talked about going through BUDS training for 2 weeks before you go into the 7 or 8 months, whatever it is. Talked about those little Zodiac boats. You got to paddle. Everybody's got to be paddling in the same direction to get over the waves, or if you're not, you're going to get tumped and thrown up on the beach again and again and again. They said the best crew they had, we called them the Munchkins, the little guys, bunch of little guys that weren't real tall, but they were tough, bless you, tough as nails, and they were the best boat team out there because they knew they weren't bigger or faster or stronger than these other teams, but they knew that together as one, 6 guys and a coxswain on the front of that boat rowing in the same direction, anything was possible. That's Stetson Bennett. I don't care if he's 5'10" or 6'4". I could care less about that. You cannot measure heart, guts, integrity, and belief in yourself. Conceive it, believe it, achieve it. How many of the toughest guys when you were at the Citadel, when you were a knob that first week or two, the big muscle heads versus the guys that look like Woody Allen, how many of those kind of guys, which is typically a lot of them, shined when you never thought they would?
Yeah, no doubt. It's funny because I was Saturday. I went down to Ruston to see UAB at Louisiana Tech in men's basketball, and UAB has a transfer center. Actually went to Hoover High School, but he played at Clemson for a couple of seasons. And I was talking to a couple of the guys there about him and said, "Hey, that guy's he's got to be all airport team because he 6'11", chiseled. He looked like he could be a defensive end." But you're right. Appearance is one thing, but heart isn't easy to measure just at first glance. But you talk about Stetson Bennett. Obviously, he's a winner through and through. And I think the other thing here, Rob, and some people may be surprised to hear this because they know I come from a basketball background. To me, Stetson Bennett epitomizes why football is the greatest team sport there is, because it's not about one individual. It's about it. That individual has to be a leader and has to be the trigger man, if you will. But it's about a team. And that's one of the things you compare Stetson Bennett to Herschel Walker, and Tony said it. He said, Herschel Walker is one of those guys like Bo Jackson. He's one of those guys that comes along literally once or twice in a lifetime. And from a pure athletic standpoint, that there's really only that's very rare air, the people that are in that class. But in the game of football, what's the old saying that the chain is as strong as the weakest link?
Yeah.
You got to have talent around you as well. And I think that's what makes football, again, I may get some pushback and argument on this, but I think it's the greatest team sport there is.
I don't argue that at all. And what you see out there, Stetson Bennett, look how calm he is. I don't care if he's 22, he's 25, he's mature. And I remember in the fourth quarter before that last drive in the Ohio State game, and we talked about it. It's easy to get mugged in your own driveway. They were playing in Atlanta, but there were a lot of Ohio State fans there. They have a lot of alumni in Metro Atlanta, but they brought a lot of fans. He was so calm. And when what do you want? You want a guy that's panicking and second guessing himself, going out there and into the huddle with less than a minute and a half to go in the game with all that on the line? Or do you want Stetson Bennett, a guy that's like, look, nobody's going to give me the benefit of the doubt. Even after winning a national championship, there were people that said we couldn't do it with me. There were better guys in that locker room. I want Stetson Bennett any day of the week. And I'm sure that you can find something to pick at him on, find somebody that knows him, that'll say something bad about him. I'm sure you can, but the story of Stetson Bennett is one that everybody needs to follow. And that is, no matter what anybody tells you, hey, you're the one ultimately that decides how your life story will be written. And they will be writing books about Stetson Bennett, and people will be reading them to their kids. There will be, hey, we hear a lot about what's being read at story time with small children nowadays. Give me a break. Read about Stetson Bennett, his story, okay? I mean, I'm not going to drag this one through the kitchen. This is a great story. It is everything that you love about sports. And in the immortal words, you were in Ruston, right next to Grambling. And think about Eddie Robinson. Great quote. Football teaches the lessons of life, young man. You get knocked on your butt, you get back up. You keep fighting. You get knocked down, you get back up again and again. You keep fighting. But when you decide you're not getting up anymore, you're done. You can't make that stuff up. But that is life. And that's why we love college football. It's the greatest game. And it's an outlet for a lot of people. That scholarship, for them, it changes them, their lives, their families' lives, the people around them's lives. And you know what? Education is the one thing. And as an athletic director, John, how many times did you have people come in and tell you they wanted to quit? And what did you always tell them?
Yeah, I mean, it's that's the easy route out, and quitting is habitual. I mean, and that's why, again, we've talked about the transfer portal. There are some reasons, valid reasons for people to transfer, but don't transfer just because the stars aren't aligned right today, and it's not the path of least resistance. I mean, it's again, you talked about the example. It's not, everybody can be gracious in winning. It's how do you act in defeat? How do you get yourself up, dust your pants off, and go back at it? And that's life. That's, life is not going to be where you get a redo on everything, or you can go the path of least resistance. That's, my wife and I have this conversation all the time in some classes today in secondary education. Kids can retake a test 2-3 times until they make 100 on it. What's that teaching anybody? I mean, that's crazy. It's
insanity.
It is. But let me get off my soapbox on that. But yeah, Stetson Bennett, again, I know we've talked about it at length, but the other thing, we've gone 31 minutes on this show without talking about NIL. I read an interesting article early this morning talking about what NIL is doing, and it may actually, in a way, help college football, because they're talking about more guys staying in. Arguably, some can make more money with NIL deals than they can in the NFL, which that's a whole nother story. But the maturity of guys, you do have 23, 24, 25-year-old quarterbacks that are not at BYU, that have not gone on a 2-year LDS mission. Because of a redshirt year. And then obviously every student athlete in the NCAA was given another year if they opted for it because of COVID.
Yeah. Well, here's a guy that got an extra 100 years of eligibility, man. We want him around forever. Doug Dean, AU Dose down in Birmingham. And Doug, we just had Tony Barnhart on and talked about that awful news out of Athens, the 2 young people's lives gone. And then what happened in Tuscaloosa, it's just amazing news, just happens like that. And then John Hartwell and I have been talking about, Stetson Bennett and what's going on in the sporting world. And always, when you come on here, one of the great writers who takes what's in his head, puts it on paper, and can put it in the vernacular like the Pope Doug Dean. Let's go.
Mr. Hartwell is permanently ill with hyperbole, right?
He's on a roll this morning, Doug.
Hey, I got my jumbo coffee.
Rare is the day I don't talk to Rob, but it's great to see you, Mr. Hartwell, and I hope you and your family are doing well. Are things good for you?
Yeah, going well. Hey, it's unusual. You know, I usually see you on here dressed in camo and getting ready to go out on a hunt. To see you in a sport coat, man, that's a change of pace there.
The day job, you know, the dreaded day job. I got a little longer to go, and I'm not going to disclose. The worst thing you can do, you're a great leader, John, and you know the story. Don't ever make yourself a lame duck in your work a week sooner than you can avoid it. Anyway, I join you guys and all of the college football world, the SEC family, in expressing sincere condolences to the Georgia fan base, those families, Devin Willock and the staffer, Chandler LaCroix, tragic. And you couldn't, as an Auburn person, Rob, you couldn't help but feel the eerie similarities of the Philip Bletzenkirchen tragedy. Some years ago. It's just, you know, we should never outlive our kids. I've talked to Mike Bletzenkirchen about that, but it is part of life. So prayers and sympathy for all those affected by that horrible loss. And, you know, what's on my mind, Rob and John, is because we're deep into basketball season, and I chuckled to see Coach Calipari should have said, rumors of my demise were greatly exaggerated. He goes into Tennessee's arena and pulls off a big win. So I mean, I'm not saying I'm a big Coach Cal apologist, but you know, if fans, we can't have it both ways. You can't want to sign the number one recruiting class every year, and they're going to be one and dones, a bunch of them, and then out of the other side of your mouth complain that it takes time to develop a team. That was an interesting weekend development, but I'm glad John is on the show, because what fascinates me the most, more than the games themselves, is what is not exactly the tree right in front of you. It's more of a forest, and that is the strategic landscape of college athletics. And I'd like to, I don't mean to turn interviewer when I'm supposed to be giving opinion.
John, you have complete license to walk around the cabin. The no seatbelt sign is on.
Oh, I appreciate it.
Always, you know that.
For it today, but John, I'm curious, to quote the great Lane Kiffin from last summer's SEC Media Days, and you can always count on Kiffin. The only thing I miss about Auburn not hiring Lane Kiffin is we watch Hugh Freeze just do unbelievable things in recruiting. But I miss the sheer entertainment value and the lack of political correctness we would be enjoying with Lane Kiffin at the microphone. But he said, well, the NCAA, quote, decided to legalize cheating. And he was referring, of course, to NIL, and I guess to the transfer portal, which is 24/7 free agency that even the NFL and MLB would do without some guardrails. But my question is, what is the meaning? Is there any meaning? And I guess I'm putting you on the spot, since you have been an AD, will be an AD again, if I had to guess, and the right organization deserves to have a leader like you. But is there any meaning to NCAA enforcement now? And what will that look like? Because I hear coaches throwing words around like tampering, which sounds like a mafia racketeering charge or something. Are they going to just be soft? Are they going to pick a few sacrificial lambs, but leave the blue bloods alone in terms of pay for play as it relates to NIL? What is your thought about the NCAA today?
Yeah, great question, Doug. And I think it's really timely, because last week the Transformation Committee came out with some guidelines. And I think that Transformation Committee is made up primarily of athletic administrators. It's made up of ADs, some coaches' input, it's people who live that world every day. And I think that is a key to some concrete and legitimate possible legislation coming out of it. And I think the question about tampering, it's gone on for years, whether legal or not legal. I don't think you're going to stop it, because the people who are orchestrating the tampering, they're not just representing Johnny Jones or Julie Jones. They are, for lack of a better term, and this term's been around for a while too, they're street agents. They're shopping people around, not necessarily mom or dad or grandma or whoever else. They may be an AAU.
John, hold those thoughts. We're going to take a quick break. We got a commercial message. We'll be right back. I want to pick up right there. You talked about the street agents. This is what's going on right after this.
From Hewlett and Dunn, just coming to let you know about our new collection of boots. It's going to be our dress boots. They're the horsepower collection, and they're genuine exotic leathers and really comfortable. Comes in all different sizes and patterns, so come check them out.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
All right, we are talking street agents with John Hartwell and Doug Dean. And John, carry on before the break with your point, which was being made, and we all want to hear it.
Yeah, and I think where those street agents come in is shopping student athletes around to get the best deal, and the best deal equals the most money in their eyes. It's not about the education they get. It's not about who's coaching them. Because the street agents are getting a cut out of it. I mean, it's purely dollars and cents. But what the Transformation Committee did last week is brought forward a recommendation that I believe is going to be approved, is when a transfer goes from the second institution to a third institution, it is going to be a very narrow window of circumstances that will allow that to be stamped carte blanche, where they could go be eligible at a third institution. Now, that's not going to stop going from institution 1 to institution 2, but it is going to vastly slow down going to institution 3, 4, 5, whatever it may be. People may say, oh, does that really happen? Yeah, that's happening every day right now. So I think that's a step in the right direction. Again, something that is objective, not subjective, because, again, I can say this now because rarely are you going, in the past, people have complained. They said, well, gosh, Alabama football, Kentucky basketball, as Doug said, some of the blue bloods out there, are they going to get the book thrown at them? Whereas and Ole Miss has had the book thrown at them in the past. So I think that is a step in a positive direction. Is it going to eliminate all of the undercurrents? No, not at all. But I don't think you can totally eliminate that. But it's a very, very good step in the right direction.
Yeah, and there's great take, Mr. Hartwell. There's prima facie evidence just on its face that the NCAA's enforcement, let's say over the last 10 years, really you could say prior to maybe 2021 when NIL was taking over, and oh, by the way, NCAA itself was facing existential threats there was talk of it, which I frankly probably support, of a departure from NCAA as we know it. Maybe let them oversee logistically March Madness. Maybe there's some value in that, but to create a commission that is altogether more reasonable, rational, and sane. Since guess what, we're essentially playing semi-pro football now, and the same with college basketball. But there was selective enforcement during that long period in recent decades, and I don't think that's just a typical Auburn fan whining that we get investigated more rigorously, although it did appear to cry out to heaven for vengeance that in the Chuck Person matter, Auburn was the only program that I'm aware of that self-imposed some pretty harsh sanctions, and it gave marginal help. Meanwhile, I'm still waiting on several other schools to have anything that resembles enforcement.
Well, you make a great point there, Doug, and I've told people this all along, and no offense to, and I've got many good friends who are attorneys, and I've said, look at everything that's happened in the NCAA the last 5 to 7 years. The only true winners in the whole deal are the attorneys, because for every decision that's made, it's just creating or birthing an entire new plethora of lawsuits in the whole deal.
Yeah, my late father-in-law loved to quote. He was an attorney, very successful attorney, Anthony Sisio in Birmingham, and he loved to quote. I don't know the source of the quote. You can help me, John. The erudite scholar that you are. One lawyer moves into town, he starves to death. 2 of them, they both get rich.
Yeah, see, Rob's the resident historian. I'm going to let him comment on that because he's going to have some historical reference to that quote.
Well, what I would say is it's like when it comes to lawyers, I've got so many placards up on my wall. My grandfather was a lawyer and a judge and taught law, and then there's one that says, "The more time I spend with my fellow lawyers, the more I love my dog." Another one is, "I wish I could be the dog, the kind of man my dog thinks I am." And the other one, an unplanned estate or any of this stuff is like 2 farmers fighting over a milk cow. One's pulling on the head, the other one's yanking on the tail, and the lawyer's milking the cow.
Rob,
we got to have lawyers.
Rob and John, I was remiss in not leading with this on this day, this important day that we honor the life and legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King, but there's just so many powerful quotes. I chose this one. Quote, "I believe that unarmed truth and unconditional love will have the final word in reality. This is why right, temporarily defeated, is stronger than evil triumphant." And that was in Dr. King's acceptance speech for the Nobel Peace Prize in 1964.
That's powerful stuff. I mean, you think about it. If you're right and you believe in it, it'll come out. And look, both of y'all made some great points about all this NIL and street agents and what's going on there and the transfer portal and ever. But college football, Doug, you're a great writer. You put out in the dose some great stuff 3 or 4 times a week. We're gonna figure this stuff out. And I'm going to ask you about Auburn.
Yeah.
In Hugh Freeze's time. Since Hugh Freeze became the head football coach at Auburn, he's accomplished, like that Army commercial. We do more before 9 a.m. than most people do their entire day. What he's done in recruiting and this transfer portal class. Well, I don't like the portal, but you got to deal with it and work around it. Where does Auburn rank? I think top 2, top 3 in the portal class. How much is that changing the narrative going forward that Auburn is strictly a basketball school?
Yeah, well, there's so many rabbit trails we could go down with your provocative question.
Very, very provocative.
I'll try to give it a high level take. And, the thing now is if you have a computer and access to the internet, getting all this stuff in real time. But I'll be first. I want to start today with some humility and saying in the early stages, I'm not a Hugh Freeze advocate. There was no hate involved, nothing weird like that. I just felt like Auburn was at a critical point culturally, strategically. We've talked to John Hartwell about it before, and he certainly has more qualified historical take on the unique beauties and challenges of Auburn athletics. But I felt like we needed what I call a unifying hire. And my fear, and in the early stages, the reasons I thought that he did not need to be on the 1A or 1B, had nothing to do with coaching. We know he can coach. God knows we know he can recruit. But I felt like it would have the effect of dividing the Auburn fan base. And it did initially. Where I was wrong, at least, and it's early, but we're just really, all we can see right now is recruiting and the kind of staff he's put together, which I'm really high on. I like the two coordinators. They've both been around forever. They've seen it all. And I think it's a credit to Coach Freeze that he plans to get the play calling to Philip Montgomery so he can be a CEO and manage at that level. So you look at what, and of course it's very much helped. There's a saying, you don't want to suffer by comparison, and that can apply to many things, some of which don't need to be mentioned on air. But honestly, Brian Harsin is making Hugh Freeze look even more like a hard worker, like a genius in how you convert a roster. But he comes in with 3 weeks to work with, not even having built relationships with these recruits, and vaults the Auburn Tigers in the national rankings from 50s to about 16th. And then right on the heels of that, without letting his staff even catch a breath, Brian Harsin would have been in Mexico on a vacation with Kess. Sorry, I said I would quit talking about Harsin. It's hard. So now portal, guys, offensive tackle Dylan Wade, anybody would want that guy. He's just big, quick, athletic, and he's going to play in the NFL if I had to guess. And then just recently, Freeze beats out both Alabama and Georgia. Naturally, they'll say, well, we backed off of them in the end. You know how that goes. Defensive lineman Justin Rogers, who was a 5-star from Kentucky. And this is one of those nose guards that will make the linebackers automatically look better. And I'm not going to go through all the portal gets, but we've loaded up on offensive line, which was a desperate need. And that includes beating out Brett Bielema at Illinois, a center, Avery Jones, who will most likely be the starting center this fall. So I'm the only thing that's missing right now. Need one more true edge rusher. We've got the kid from Vandy, but he doesn't project to be, necessarily elite. But if they can get that, and obviously the most important position, can they take their time and not lower their standards and get an experienced, talented QB out of the portal? I think right now they're going to go into spring and let Robbie Ashford and Holden Geriner battle it out. And don't be shocked if one of those two starts to look entirely more efficient and competent when they finally get great coaching. So it's a remarkable job, and they sit at second ranking behind UCLA in the valuation of these portal transfers.
Yeah, John, you've got experience. You're 03 through 12 at Ole Miss. You know Hugh Freeze. Tell us something we don't know about him that we can expect to see in terms of changes at Auburn, other than the fact that Auburn's back in the business of recruiting college football players.
Well, here's one of the things about him is he's, one of his many great qualities is he's charismatic. I mean, and I know that's a term that doesn't get said a lot of times, but he's charismatic in a very positive way. That guy, he just oozes positivity, and he's done that not only with himself but with the staff that he has surrounded himself there with at Auburn. And it's no surprise to me at all the success he's had recruiting. Now the great thing is the honeymoon lasts till that first kickoff this fall, but I think what he's done so far is outstanding. And you make a great point about the quarterbacks. He does a great job adapting his system tweaking it. He's not going to totally overhaul it, but he tweaks it to the talent that he has. And a lot of coaches, try to put a square peg in a round hole. They said, hey, regardless of who's running at quarterback or who my DNs are, I am going to run this plan. And Hugh does that from a 10,000 foot level, but when you get down to the personnel on the field, he can tweak it to make them successful.
And Rob, great take, John. It would be really stupid of me if I didn't reference the linebacker position. Or what I love about that is Coach Freeze is not shy. Sometimes I felt like Gus Malzahn didn't want to poke the bear in recruiting with the big boys, but Freeze brings in from LSU linebacker DeMario Tolan, and there's a reason he wants to move on. I forgot the elite linebacker at LSU.
Harold Perkins.
Yeah, Perkins. Who would want to compete with that guy? But also, of all places, Ole Miss linebacker Austin Keys, who is a big body, has committed and will be at Auburn, and he's one of these 245-pound guys that will fill that Mike linebacker position that was really killing us last year. We would get hit and push back 3 yards instead of making – this guy's going to make contact, and the runner's going the opposite direction. So I love the fact that Freeze gets it, that all is fair in love and SEC football.
And the portal. I mean, and it doesn't remind y'all so much of free agency, but is it harder than y'all can ever remember to try to remember the depth chart on your football team, whatever team it is on the roster? I mean, you literally, these guys are here and you just hope they play and don't quit before the bowl game.
Don't go a hard copy. Just keep it digital or you'll be changing it too often.
I mean,
hey, Rob, you make
producing a magazine now.
You make a great point about free agency, but there's one asterisk to this. And again, I hate to keep coming back to NIL.
Yeah.
It's free agency without a salary cap because there's no cap on NIL right now.
Yeah, that's right. And I agree with you. And that's why I think the free market will break it. Already I'm hearing from people who have Frank Duffy talked about it with us. He has 3 LSU friends that own businesses in Louisiana. All 3 of the players they sponsored quit before the bowl game. Most recently, before the bowl game, Keyshawn Boutte. I wouldn't. I know he's a talent, but if I'm an NFL team, I don't want a guy like that on my team. He's not a team guy. He's a me guy, and that's what we're seeing. The NFL has the easiest job ever of selecting people now because you're finding out the guys you want to mess with and the ones you don't want to mess with based on how they act with NIL.
That's true. Hey, one other thing on NIL, and I'll leave it alone for a couple of minutes, but I did have an observation the other day when I went to Ruston to see UAB play at La Tech men's basketball, which, by the way, Andy Kennedy, and I talked about this a little bit last week, Rob, he's done a phenomenal job at UAB. I look for him to be a hot name here in the next 2 months, going back to the Power 5 level. We talked about comparing what he did at Ole Miss to what Kermit Davis has done, and Kermit is a great guy and has been a very successful basketball coach. But Andy's record at Ole Miss, recruiting to Tad Smith Coliseum, affectionately known as the Tad Pad, compared to the brand new facility that Kermit Davis has. Andy had a little handicap there, but he is still an elite coach. But what I was going to say about NIL, I applaud both La Tech and UAB with what they've done to help facilitate NIL opportunities. If you look at the back of UAB's shooting shirts, which I really liked their uniforms the other day too. I hadn't seen them in person, but they said Birmingham across their jersey. Looks really cool. But across the back of their shooting shirts, they've got their Twitter handles on there so that people can contact them about NIL opportunities. La Tech didn't have that, but when they did the player introductions, when they put a player's face shot up on the big screen, they had their Twitter handles too. So I applaud them for creative, out of the box thinking on facilitating NIL opportunities.
I love it. We're going to take a quick break, and I want Doug to come back with his final thoughts right after this. This is I love that having Birmingham on there. And Doug, I want your answer on that one right after this quick break.
Hey everyone, my name is David Wisdom.
And I'm Shelby McNeil, and we're attorneys with Haggard, Cleveland, Pierce, Thompson & Short, your local Auburn law firm. Established in 1959 right in the heart of Auburn, Haggard, Cleveland, Pierce, Thompson & Short has grown in response to our clients' legal needs. We're a full-service law firm focusing on the legal issues our clients face.
We take pride in providing our clients with exceptional legal services, ongoing communication, and skilled representation. If you have any questions about our services, please give us a call or visit our website today.
All right, Rob Browne back with Doug Dean, AU Dose. Doug, your final thoughts and takeaway, but as always, you're batting 380 on the segment.
Well, my comments are enhanced by getting to balance it with a great mind like John Hartwell's. Not to leave you out of that, Rob.
Don't worry about that. John has a great.
So I'd be delighted to always have Mr. Hartwell as my compadre when I come on this great show. I'll tell you what, kind of punctuating what I first began with and closing. Another strategic part of the strategic landscape I'm really fascinated by is I must quote the great Nick Saban, who, and I chuckled, anybody that's been around the SEC since he came on board at Alabama, and really even going back to LSU, would understood that you got your hands full when your rival is coached by Nick Saban. But when Nick Saban talks about his deep concerns about competitive balance in college football, I want to say, come on, man. Now, if he is being enough of a statesman, and maybe he is, to be fair, because I could see him being ultimately a commissioner of in some capacity in college football, but if he wanted to. But if he's talking about the little guys, the UCFs, and the list goes on, and TCU having a fair shot, that's that competitive balance question, which it's conflicting. We've got an expansion to 12 teams in the playoff. That's good. You can get in. But do we really have balance? Because of NIL cash, there's going to be still a bunch of haves and some other have-nots. I think the number is somewhere around 15 to 20 that can really deploy heavy NIL. And so as much as more things change, the more they stay the same. Your thoughts, John?
Yeah, I think you're spot on there, Doug. And again, deploying the cash for NIL is one thing, but as we get 3, 5, 7 years into this, it's being able to deploy the cash for that. Yeah. But also, on the other hand, being able to keep up with the Joneses, if you will, in terms of facility enhancements, expansions, bells and whistles, again, it goes back to recruiting, and dollars are going to be number one priority in recruiting. But if you've got 15 or 20 schools that have similar amounts of dollars, who's got the bling? Who's got the differentiator that's going to get Johnny or Julie to go to University A versus University B? And again, for a lot of institutions, that pot is only so large. You can only go to the well so many times with your alums and supporters, whether it's tickets, facilities, NIL, what have you. And those that can manage all of that are going to be the ones that come out on top. And that's why you've seen really in the last 6 weeks or so many athletic directors come out and endorse the NIL collectives associated with their institutions, where in the past they've been a little reluctant to that because they knew that it was probably going to cause a hit to their facilities campaign or some other endeavors that they have.
Yeah.
Well said.
Doug, look, man, great stuff as always, and we'll get you back on later in the week. Hopefully you can be on Saturday Roundtable if you're maybe even live from the deer stand. But man, I don't know if you got one, but anyway, but thank you a million, and let's do this again Thursday or Friday.
Everybody be safe out there, and great talking to you guys.
Thanks, Doug. Have a great week.
Absolutely. Doug Dean, AU Dose in Birmingham. Now let's switch gears. Head over to Nashville, Johnny Ballpark Franks, native son of Huntsville, Alabama. Florida State grad coming up, John. He's close to his 14,000th interview. And he's interviewed more Heisman Trophy winners than any living or dead American. That's dead American can't interview anymore. But anyway, he is about to be at 14,000 interviews. Does a great sports show on Mondays on the Ump in Huntsville. And Johnny, tell us first who you're talking to tonight on the Ump and how can they follow you? And then let's talk what's on your mind.
Well, I wanted to talk a little Alabama basketball. So the Mr. Platt himself, Wimp Sanderson, Alabama coaching legend, will be on to talk Alabama basketball and more. And Kevin Norwood, when A.J. McCarron needed a clutch first down, I know he had some All-Americans on there, but Kevin Norwood, Mr. Clutch himself, he'll be joining me as well on tonight's show.
Looking forward to it. And how do they get that?
The best things to do is just follow me on Twitter at BP Frank Show. I'm on the Ump in Huntsville at 7:30 a.m. 103.9 FM. It's 5 to 7 every Monday afternoon. And in addition, you can listen online at umpsports.com.
All right. Johnny, lots happened in the last week when we were talking. Georgia wins the national championship. And we've talked with Tony Barnhart. And that was Doug Dean down in Birmingham, and talked with Tony about the tragic news out of Georgia, and then also about the awful what happened with the Alabama basketball player charged with capital murder. It's not your typical topics that we address or they do on SEC Network or anywhere else, but just it's a world that we live in. But there's also a lot of great news happening, and you talk about Alabama basketball. And John Hartwell, of course, basketball guy, he played at the Citadel. But your thoughts on this Alabama basketball team? How good can they be? And are they the best Alabama team that you've seen in recent memory? Because I think they are.
I go back to me, the measuring stick is this Alabama team back in the 75-76 season. That was the team that faced Indiana in the NCAA tournament. And if it wasn't for a couple of missed layups and a really, really bad call as far as charging, Indiana probably would not have been undefeated that season. Alabama would have got the win and advanced. So to me, that Alabama team, probably the measuring stick. And I'm going to actually ask Wimp Sanderson today, because he was an assistant coach on that team, along with all the Sweet 16 teams he had at Alabama as a head coach. But this team is, what can you say about a team beating a really good team in LSU by as many points as they did on Saturday? It's not like they're winning by 6 or 8 points. They're blowing teams out. And it's because of what they do on the offensive side of the boards, is being able to shoot well from the 3-point range, but then also from a defensive standpoint. This team is built to not only win an SEC championship, this team is built to win a national title.
Yeah. John Hartwell, jump in here. You're a basketball junkie.
Yeah, we talked last week about the job Nate Oates has done and an unbelievable coach. And what I like, Johnny, is, and we talked again last week about this, is everything they do, and they get out and go on the offensive end, but it's all predicated on what they do on the defensive end and the pressure they apply and the turnovers they create, and even on missed shots, getting the ball out on the break. And they've done a really nice job, sit atop the SEC right now at 5-0. To me, Texas A&M is a surprise being undefeated. I think they may have gotten the benefit of early scheduling there. But then you look at the other end, and you've got Eric Musselman's team sitting at 1-4. The only thing keeping them out of last place right now is an 0-5 Ole Miss team. So, and again, we talked earlier on the show before you came on about Kentucky and going into Knoxville and with a really impressive win there. And, everybody had written Cal off and, say what you want to say, but he's got NBA talent from number 1 through number 13 or 14 on his roster. So any given day, they can go beat anybody in the country.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm still trying to wrap my arms. What does that Kentucky win mean on Saturday as far as being able to go into Knoxville and knocking off a Tennessee team, which is, once again, another team certainly capable of making a run to the Final Four, itself. But to me, it also shows you just before that what Alabama did to Kentucky, how embarrassing of a loss that was for Kentucky going into Tuscaloosa. To me, that just echoes once again how, much better Alabama is compared to anybody else in the SEC.
Look, the SEC top to bottom, we thought Tennessee and Alabama were in a league by themselves, and the Kentucky was way down. We talked about it Saturday. They're still like you ever shoot a cottonmouth or a rattlesnake, go pick it up right after you do it. It's going to pop up reflexively. It's going to bite you. That's Kentucky basketball. This Kentucky team has a lot of experience. I mean, Oscar Tshiebwe's been there for a while. NIL probably kept him at Kentucky for another year. So now that Tennessee's been beaten at home, we're held to under 60 points by Kentucky. And we saw what Alabama did in Tuscaloosa to Kentucky. It just, to me, looks like Alabama is running away with the SEC. And as soon as I say that, they're going to stub their toe against somebody. It's hard to go undefeated, but they've got this year's equivalent of Jabari Smith, guys, as a freshman. Brandon Miller. Is he better than Jabari? What maybe y'all two want to compare their game?
I mean, I go back to, my conversations with Wimp Sanderson because I visited with him back in mid-December. This is after Alabama achieved the second of its 2 wins this year over number 1 ranked teams, North Carolina and Houston. And I was actually going ahead and throwing it out there, about making a run for a national championship. And basically his thing was pump the brakes. However, now you fast forward 6 weeks later, here we are in mid-January, and look at what they're doing right now. It's like, I don't necessarily think that you have to pump the brakes. To me now, it's this grind of now you're getting into conference play. You're not at the beginning. You're not at the end. You're just getting into the, midway point over the next week and a half or so. And when you've got a young team, you're talking about uncharted waters. So I think the biggest challenge that Alabama faces right now is just not getting complacent, not reading the press clippings, and just basically going out each and every night. I know it's a cliche, but that's the thing when you talk about a grind like this, because other teams, if they're hot from the 3-point range, any team out there that shoots well can beat you. And so this is a thing where the defensive part of the equation, you can't have any slumps as far as on defense. You may have slumps as far as shooting the ball at times, but at least on defense, you can still play with the kind of effort that can, compensate for your off night shooting per se.
Yeah. And John Hartwell, you listened and watched the Auburn Mississippi State game down at Neville Arena in Auburn. Mississippi State, tough, scrappy team. Bruce Pearl was worried about them because he gets worried about everybody. That's what keeps him focused. Mississippi State Saturday night, 0 for 18 in 3-point range. Talk about feast or famine as a perfect example. The dogs are getting riled up about it.
Hold on just a second.
Hey, Johnny, I would love to have Wimp Sanderson. It's funny. I listened to Wimp and Barry Sanderson's show on Tide 100.9 a lot.
Right.
Wimp Sanderson I love him. And I go back to how many of your players have graduated from Alabama that played basketball for you, Coach Sanderson? Wimp Sanderson looked at the guy and said, as many as wanted to. John Hartwell.
Yeah. Sorry for the, you got talking about the Mississippi State Bulldogs, and the dogs started barking on that one.
I love
it. Sorry about that.
I love it.
Yeah. I mean, the old adage and breaking it down as simple as you can, like Coach Sanderson likes to do. Hey, if you can't score, you can't win. And, you got to find a way. If you get to 0 for whatever, there's one philosophy that says, hey, you're going to shoot yourself in a slump. You're going to shoot yourself out of a slump. Keep jacking it up from out there, or go in the post. As a guy that was like to make a living on the lower blocks, I like going into the post. It's a higher percentage shot, but it's going back to Alabama for just a second, and again, the challenges and our condolences go out to the young lady who lost her life there in Tuscaloosa. But how Coach Oates deals with the dismissal of Darius Miles, who's been charged with capital murder, and that clearly, even though he had only played in 6 games, I think this year, how he deals with that from a team perspective is going to be a challenge for him, and it'll be how it plays out over the next 2 or 3 weeks, and then as you get on into February and early March, he's got his work cut out for him on that.
Yeah, Johnny.
Oh, I totally agree, and that's the part and the challenges where fans kind of get confused. I mean, I know certainly the Kentucky fan base, for example, very hard on Kentucky so far this season. Of course, a lot of that got eliminated after that big win on Saturday. But, I think so many times from a fan standpoint, they underestimate the importance of the mental challenges. I mean, boy, I've been there, done that. And as far as, traveling with teams, basketball teams, and it's a long grind. It takes a lot out of you mentally, going to the different various motel rooms. You wake up in the middle of the night not knowing what city, where you are, because after a while, all the motel rooms look alike. Plus the challenges of going to school. You're a student as well, part of the student athlete portion of that. And so there's just so many factors coming into place. And then you talk about the expectations where Kentucky has them. Alabama, yes, you want to be good as a team in that locker room. You want to be one of the best teams in the country. But are the expectations from the fan base there? Final Four or bust? Not for Alabama basketball. It's not. So, these other programs, yeah, you want to be there. But these other programs like the Kentuckys of the world, the Blue Bloods of the world, those are the kind of programs that really have those extra layers of the mental part of it and challenges that they have to overcome throughout the season.
Yeah. And John, as an athletic director traveling, I mean, my dad used to travel so much, chasing architecture work all over the country. He would wake up not knowing where he was in a hotel room till he got the morning newspaper at breakfast. And that is a true feeling. It's almost like vertigo, isn't it?
Yeah, it can be a grind, especially as you get later into the season. And one of the things to watch, and you see this happen over and over in college basketball, you play so many more games in college than you do in high school. And for the young kids, for the freshmen who are, a lot in the SEC are playing very well right now, do they hit a wall when they get to, mid-February and having played very well and then hit a slump, and you see it year after year. So it'll be interesting to see how teams adjust for that, how they change up number of minutes played for that stretch. So some of those guys can get their legs back under them.
Yeah.
And
John,
depending on, and two, the other part about that.
Hold that thought, Johnny. We're going to take a quick break because I want to get your follow up on that. And John, I know you've got to hop off to get to a meeting, but if you can come back after the break, we got a few more minutes with you, but right back after this quick break on Sidelines.
Hey y'all, it's Ainsley from Hewlett & Dunn, just coming to let you know about our new collection of boots. It's going to be our dress boots. They're the Horsepower collection, and they're genuine exotic leathers and really comfortable. Comes in all different sizes and patterns, so come check them out.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4 City exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House Equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
Rob Browne, breaking ground with John Hartwell and Johnny Ballpark Franks. And Johnny, you were coming back with a great reply to what John Hartwell had said. So let's hear it. Johnny? Yeah. Johnny, Ballpark Franks, I know you were trying to reply to what John Hartwell had said. So I want to hear what you got to say. Okay. He may have muted himself, John Hartwell, but Johnny, jump back in when you can. But, John, you talk about the travel schedule and the midweek games. And again, we keep using this as an extreme example, but wait until you get the Big Ten, the Wednesday night volleyball game, UCLA at Maryland on a Wednesday night. You think these Pac-12 schools, Big Ten teams, we forget about, Penn State going to Southern Cal for the Tuesday night or the Monday night volleyball game or the swim meet or whatever. I'm not going to be surprised if we don't see some carpooling.
Yeah, those direct flights from L.A. to College Park, Maryland, or to Piscataway, New Jersey, they're kind of few and far between. So yeah, when literally the Big Ten going coast to coast will be an interesting dynamic for sure.
Well, Johnny Ballpark Franks, if you are there, hop on back with us. But I think you may have lost him there for a minute. I'm not sure where he's traveling right now. But I'm just looking at this basketball issue. You're playing, you play a Tuesday night or a Wednesday night schedule, and then you've got Saturday. The road trips in the SEC aren't that bad. But if you play a late game, you've got to fly back Fayetteville down to Gainesville or whatever. You're getting back pretty late, but these guys, they probably sleep on the planes, or maybe they read the Norton Anthology of English Literature. But Johnny Ballpark Franks, what do you think about what John was saying? And you were replying about all the travel and all the changes. There's so much that goes in to every day during basketball season. It can be a long grind. And if you don't handle it right, it can wipe you out.
And the other part too, and I know it's one of these topics that's not really discussed, but depending on your depth as far as how long your bench is, I mean, I remember being a part of a team back in the mid-90s that was certainly primed to make its third consecutive trip to the NCAA tournament. And our point guard, who had been our 4-year starter for us, he has the flu 2 weeks before the season is over, and he was never the same at the tail end of his season. It's those, and especially when you're traveling, you're going to these different cities, you're in buses, a cold turns into a severe illness. I mean, there's so many other factors a part of it as well.
Yeah. John Hartwell, I know you've got to go. Your closing comments, and we'll do it again in a couple of days.
Yeah, one of the things I'll say, though, that has changed, and I can remember, again, it's been a few years being a student athlete, and the grind of playing on a Tuesday night in Huntington, West Virginia at Marshall, and getting on that bus going back to Charleston within the gates of the Citadel. But, one of the positive byproducts of some of this increased revenue, and you're talking about student athlete experiences, the ability to charter, and SEC men's and women's basketball, and a lot of leagues, even Utah State, we chartered a lot for conference play. You're able to fly back late, the night after the game. But again, you're at the mercy of television too. So you may play a 9 p.m. tip time, even if the game's over at 10 or at 11, maybe on the charter by 12:30 or 1, and you got an hour and 40 minute flight. So it is a grind. And again, those coaches that can manage travel, and that's why you look down a lot of these teams now, they say, hey, it used to be suits, but no coaches wear suits anymore. It's the pullover and the khakis that they wear. But if you got more people out of uniform than you do in uniform, that's what 2 or 3 of those folks are doing, is make sure everything goes smoothly travel-wise. But again, it's planes, trains, and automobiles. You can do all the advanced planning you want. Mother Nature or technical problems can cause challenges. So it's those are the things that coaches, and it seems like Murphy's Law. The plane is late, or the plane has a problem. That doesn't happen when you win. That happens when you lose. And that just, that admin person gets the wrath of the head coach when those things happen.
And then Dale Griffith sits next to you. That's even worse. Johnny Ballpark Franks, I like what he just said, because Planes, Trains, and Automobiles is without a doubt one of my favorite movies of all time. But the travel, people, you're right. You forget about the wear and tear on that and what you eat and everything. They plan, y'all. You've been an athletic director, Johnny, and John, you are an athletic director. I mean, you got to plan every meal. All this stuff is done in advance, isn't it?
Oh, everything is. And except, sometimes you have the luxury, if you're traveling by bus per se, that you'll stop in an area that has maybe 3 or 4 fast food restaurants or something. And you say, okay, you all have choices, wherever you want to go for it. Just be back on the bus in 30 minutes, So I miss the travel with basketball. Football is especially, it's like you're moving an army. At least with basketball, with under 20 or so individuals, you get to really know the student athletes. Everybody gets to know each other. You become really a brotherhood per se, and that's one of the things. Even now, all these years later, I still miss that part of it. And when you hear about players that are retired and what they miss most, it's those type of experiences when you're together as a group and the outside world is looking in, but you've kind of blocked off from the outside world as well.
Yeah. And we all know how healthy, if you are taking strips or whatever it is, Love's Travel Plaza and Bucky's. Hot brisket. Let's go. You can't beat truck stop food, man. It really does wonders for you. But I think what both of y'all just said is so true. You get close to people. We used to like to go pheasant hunting out in South Dakota and drive. It took 17 hours from Memphis to Chamberlain, South Dakota. If you flew, you went up to Minneapolis, St. Paul, had a 4 or 5 hour layover, had to get on a puddle jumper from there to Sioux Falls. Then you got to Sioux Falls and the rental car, had to check your guns in, your dogs. That was 12 or 13 hours. And you got to know people and you got to get a lot of business done. But I don't think there's anything wrong with it, but I would hate to be someone delivering the news to the volleyball team or the football team because of weather at Rutgers. We're going to have to take the train or the Greyhound bus to Southern Cal. That might be a little bit tough, but they take those 18-wheelers out days in advance, don't they, for those road trips in college football? This is huge.
Absolutely.
John. Yeah.
And I'm sure if you're in athletics long enough, you can have your stories of where you're stuck on the side of the road somewhere or stuck on the interstate due to snow conditions. I've experienced both. And let me just say, there's nothing pleasant about either one of those kind of experiences either.
Yeah, it is. And John, look, if we, like I said, we want you to stay with us, but if you got to get to a meeting, check out, but your final thoughts.
Yeah, Johnny makes a great point there. If you're in the business long enough, you have those things. I'll never forget when I was at Ole Miss, and this was the year after Eli, and for whatever reason, I can't take the credit or the abuse for scheduling this. Ole Miss had scheduled a home and home with Wyoming, and so this would have been 2004. Go to Wyoming, lose the game, and then find out that the plane had a flat tire, so they had to get another plane. I'll never forget this. So using Miami Air, and ended up having to get the plane that had taken Furman had played at Pitt that day, so had to wait for the plane to go from Pittsburgh to Greenville, South Carolina, and then come, and they weren't going to be able to fly into Laramie, had to go to Denver. So lose the game, have to bus from Laramie to Denver. And oh, by the way, Furman took Pitt to triple overtime that day. And so the entire team sat on the floor in the Denver airport for about 3 hours. That was not a fun experience.
Oh wow, that is.
I'll leave you guys on that parting shot. That's fun. Hey, Johnny, great to be with you. Rob, you guys have a great week.
Thank you so much,
Have a
John
great
Hartwell.
week.
Look forward to being back on with you Thursday. John Hartwell and now Johnny Ballpark Franks. I know, Johnny, you've got to get to a meeting. Your final thoughts before we go to Franz Beard, GatorbaitMedia.com down in Gainesville. But I think I've never heard stories like that about these road trips. But again, and Johnny, I'm getting all kind of stuff from people saying Johnny has some of the best interviews. And again, tell them how they can follow you and listen, and what time tonight you're going to have the king of the Plaid Palace, Wimp Sanderson, on with you.
But the best thing to do to keep up with all the things that I'm doing is just follow me on Twitter at BP Frank Show. You can also follow me on Facebook at Johnny Ballpark Franks. I am on, as far as on the air, I've turned my every day of the week show to just a weekly format now, where I specialize in really one-on-one interviews. And today, a couple of Alabama legends at 5:15 Central Time. Wimp Sanderson, Alabama coaching legend in basketball, and then at 6 o'clock, Mr. Clutch himself, Kevin Norwood, one of AJ McCarron's favorite receivers back in the about 10 plus years ago. He knows what it's like to win back-to-back titles too. So that's on the air today. And if you're not in the Huntsville, North Alabama area, you can listen online at umpsports.com or download the app at umpsports.
All right, Johnny Ballpark Franks. How close are we, by the way, to the 14,000th interview?
Yeah, we're 29 away. So at the way we're thinking about probably the first guest in the 8 shows from now, and that's I'm still trying to wrap my arms around 14,000 guests, not 14,000 different guests, just 14,000 interviews, and that will be coming up in the next 8 weeks.
All right, so much. I love it. I'm looking forward to hearing it. Talk to you next week. Thanks so much for being on with us. We always love it.
Have a great week. Thank you again.
Always. All right, Franz Beard, GatorbaitMedia.com. And Franz, I got to give you credit. Back in the summer, GatorbaitMedia.com, final pithy thoughts, daily thoughts, you said, and I'm going to quote as best as I can, but we're going to need some of these NIL deals to blow up. We're going to need some disasters. It looks like you've got a disaster potentially with the 4 or 5-star, whatever ratings service you read, quarterback and the NIL deal coming in from California to Florida. What's the latest on that and your takeaways?
I am going to go on record as saying he's going to be a Florida Gator.
Okay.
He'll be in school this week. Quite frankly, they got way over their skis. They wanted to make an impression and tell everybody. This one collective, I believe, it was 95% of it. And what they wanted to do was tell everybody, well, look at us. We can afford to do this big contract. Not only that, it's going to tell everybody that Florida is the place to be because we pay better than anybody else. It's a great idea. Only one small little detail. You got to have the money to do it. They didn't have the money to do it. And then their lawyers got involved, agents got involved, and everybody had their hands in there. And the Rashadas were looking at an amount of money that had started out really big, and it suddenly, this guy's got his hand in, this guy's got his hand in, and you've got a lot less money. The Rashadas love Florida. First off, let's get that out of the way. They love Florida. They love Billy Napier, and that goes for Harlan Rashada, who played college football at either California or Arizona State, one of the two.
Okay.
I don't remember. But they love Billy Napier. They love Florida. They think that Florida is the right place to be. But it's a matter of trust. and the trust issues are being resolved. There's a new contract that's out there. It's less money than what was out there originally. They've gone out shopping and found out that it's still more money than get anywhere else. He's going to be a Gator.
Okay. So bottom line, we heard figures like $13 million. I mean, that's just insane to me. That's more than most rookies make in the first round in the NFL. So it's worked out apparently. So that's a positive. Friends, as far as Florida Gator football goes, Billy Napier, I like him. I like what he's trying to do. I mean, he's got more support staff than he has scholarship players. It's just crazy, but it's not the only place where that's the case. There's a lot of schools that are investing so much into support. How much is enough? And it looks to me like we're overdoing it in the Department of Redundancy.
Well, I think that they've got an awful lot of people to do this, but the world of college football has changed so much because of the portal.
Yeah.
And so many of these support people their job is to get to the background of this guy. Let's say you are a high school kid over here, and then over on this side, I got a college kid. I got to make a decision, but you're both wide receivers. I got to make a decision which one is going to be best for my program. Are you a transfer, for example, that is disgruntled, that is going to be bad in my locker room? I got to have people to find that out. Are you a high school kid who's thinking, well, I'll go there 1 year, and if I don't catch 50 passes, I'm out of here? And you got to have all this information and background information that you don't have because the kids are different now. I'm not begrudging kids getting money or anything like that. Not begrudging them the opportunity to transfer, but we have no rules, and that is where the problem is. And that's why you've got to have all these support people, because you've got so much information. And you got to remember something. It's kind of like right now at Alabama, their head basketball coach has a real problem on his hands. Why? Because one of his players has been implicated and charged with capital murder. That's not good for the program.
No.
You could say, well, hadn't been playing since December, and he's really been a problem. You can say all these things, but
friends, let's take a quick break. Hold those thoughts. We're going to be right back. I want to hear your thoughts.
Hey y'all, it's Ainsley from Hewlett & Dunn, just coming to let you know about our new collection of boots. It's going to be our dress boots. They're the horsepower collection, and they're genuine exotic leathers and really comfortable. Comes in all different sizes and patterns, so come check them out.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Rob Browne back here. We're going to talk sporty with Franz Beard, GatorBaitMedia.com. Extraordinarily talented journalist and writer, thinker, one who takes complex minutia and puts it in the vernacular with the greatest of ease, deep from inside his bunker, like a gator deep below Defuniak Springs or Wakula Springs or Cypress Gardens.
Ichatuckney Springs. Now you want to talk about the spring?
Yeah, Crystal Springs.
No. You got to come here and You got to come here and tube Ichatuckney Springs. That is something that should be on your bucket list.
Well, you know what else though? You know where gators love to lay in wait for their prey? The muck. Lake Okeechobee. Yeah, the muck. Hey,
well, it's amazing how many good players have come out of that area. It's amazing. But, we were talking before. Darius Miles murdered somebody. Alleged. He's been accused of it.
Yeah.
Been accused of it. Let's say it that.
Capital
murder. Yeah, that's not the kind of thing for a team that is bucking to be the number one team in the country, which Alabama is. Yeah. And talk about, this is the kind of thing, deserved or not, this is what gets coaches fired, because a coach is, the way the NCAA has set up the rules, the coach is in charge of the whole program. So if you got one bad apple in this program who gets out and does something, and he may be a fringe player, who isn't even seeing the floor or the field, let's say, and he goes out and does something truly stupid, it's the head coach that pays for it. This is why I guarantee you Jim Harbaugh will be coaching in the NFL next year, because the NCAA, which will not prosecute Will Wade, which will not prosecute, up at Kansas, Bill Self, which will not prosecute Kelvin Sampson again, all these other things. The NCAA will go after you for lying to them. And the word is, what I get from Michigan people, is that Jim Harbaugh really didn't lie to anybody. They asked him, did these two staffers or a couple of staffers do this? And he says, of course not. They would not. They know better. They know I'd fire them. Well, it turns out they did do stuff, and now the NCAA is after him for misleading them. And that's how the NCAA works. They're the ultimate backstabber of an organization. We talk about people who are backstabbers. Well, that's what the NCAA is as an organization, backstabbers. And here we have NIL. We've talked about that. No rules. Transfers. Very few rules. And we have this great big cluster. I was talking with somebody this morning, Rob, and we got to have a new organization. But first and foremost, you got to have a leader. Secondly, you got to have some infrastructure planned, because you can't just say, okay, we're all going to go have our brand new thing and here's our rules. Well, what are the rules? Nobody's decided them yet. Nobody's decided who's the leader. Who's going to be in charge? Who's the committee that's going to be in charge of setting up the rule base for everybody to vote on? Way too many things. And this is all the result of Mark Emmert, who should not be allowed to run a convenience store in Del Rio, Texas.
Yeah. Well,
being in charge.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to argue that they do anything. There's some things the NCAA has been successful with, but when it comes to the portal and NIL, they just played kick the can and just threw it out there. And there's this narrative. It's a false narrative that's pushed by the most vocal group of attorneys from California that got all this NIL stuff out there, that these athletes are preyed upon, put upon victims. I mean, put that garbage in a trash bag and put it out on the street for pickup. Okay. It's garbage.
It is exactly that, because look, I made a comment today in my column. I said, okay, maybe the answer is make these people employees, because once you make them employees, then you can hire them, fire them. You can do all sorts of stuff. You can give them pay raises. You can give them pay cuts, etc. You pay, if you have 250 athletes in your program, and somewhere between 200 and 250 is what I think every SEC school has.
Wait a minute. You mean student athletes, men's and women's, all sports?
Yeah, all sports.
Okay, I would say judging on the numbers, like for example, all 21 sports, 582 student athletes. So
Yeah, but
I
how
would
many
say
of them are on scholarship? You got
a lot of them. Yeah. Not all
115.
of them. Yeah.
Florida's got 11 women's sports. We got 115 on scholarship.
Okay. I see where you're going with that. But hey, I'm with you about make them employees. Give them, you know what the hardest thing, but the best advice we were given if we ever had a relationship, guy with his girlfriend, she wants her freedom, wants respect. Give it to her. Give people what they ask for, and you'll be surprised that isn't really what they want. But make these student athletes employees, and then you can fire them, and you can say, you know what? You quit before the bowl game. You don't get that money. We're taking it back. They get a W-2, but they can be hired and fired. They want to be treated like adults. They want to make all the money that the coaches do. By God, make the student athletes employees of the university.
Well, I wouldn't make them employees of the university, because then once they do that, you have academic people
I know
who do not understand sports or business, which is what the NCAA does.
Yeah.
What you need is the athletic association.
Yes.
In charge. Now, here's I'll throw a number at you. 250 student athletes, okay, which is about what you have there, because you have 85 in football, but you have all the limitations. You got 13 basketball, that's 98. But then, baseball's only allowed 11, et cetera, like that. So
11.7, yeah.
Yeah. So you end up with about 250.
Yeah.
If you multiply that times $80,000,
mm-hmm.
you get $20 million. In the SEC, every single school can afford to do that, because you got that new contract coming in with ESPN. Every single school can afford to do that. Now, if $80,000 is the cap, now that doesn't mean everybody gets $80,000. For example, you can say football out of there has $10 million, and to be spread over 85 players. So that doesn't mean that everybody gets it. You may have guys. You may say, okay, incoming freshman, $50,000. If you've been and $80,000 may be your cap number, but then you got money for raises and everything like that. But you got to figure that out, and hence the problem. Yeah. We know all these numbers can add up in the right way. The problem is, how are we going to get people together to make these rules and set it up? And you're going to have an enforcement staff that makes sure you're not. It's kind of like the NFL. If the NFL finds out that you have exceeded the cap, the fines are serious. I mean, we're talking about big time money. And you have to come up with rules that make it right. But can we do it? I don't know. I don't know if the will to do it is out there. I think you got certain people and organizations out there who are happy with the status quo, because they're saying, I'm up here and I got such a great program, and you're down there and you suck.
Yeah.
So we're just gonna keep our boot right on your Adam's apple, and if you make one move to the contrary, we'll just stomp it and crush it.
Yeah. Well, let me say this. I correct myself. I don't want to make them employees of the university, because we know what that can lead to. We know about tenured professors. I mean, that's unheard of in the business world, but in academia, it's fairly common. I think it's a deplorable title that you should ever allow someone to be untouchable. And as far as the student athletes, yeah, you have an athletic association, collective, or whatever, but make them employees of that. And what you'll find is, when you're an employee of a company, you have an employee, handbook, you have rules, secrets, whatever, of the proprietary culture that you adhere to. Okay. But you got to have free speech. You got to let people say what they think. You cannot erase what's happened. That's just, it never happens. People laugh at you. It just won't work. But make them employees of that athletic association. Fire them if they're not showing up for practice. They're not academically, progressing toward their degree. Start holding them accountable. I'm going to tell you what, give them what they want. All right. And you wait until we see some of these big NIL deals with these 18-year-old kids and all of the leeches that are just sucking the lifeblood out of them. These parasitic, quote, friends. They're not friends. They're leeches. And wait till you start seeing tax time show up. And a lot of times, these collectives are offering to do the tax work every month, put aside money. Oh, the parents, we'll take care of it. We'll take care of it. Better make sure you're putting that money aside, because then you got wait till we start having players held out of games, ineligible, not for academics or violation of team rules, but because they're in trouble with the IRS because they have not taken care of what they needed to with the NIL deal. Give them what they want. That's what I call the free market. People worry about, self, help and do it yourself. And who needs a financial advisor? Who needs a banker? Who needs a doctor? Take out your own appendix, cut your own hair, do your own brain surgery. Go for it. You can do it. It's a free country. See what happens. See what happens when you do it. Yeah. So I'll tell you right now, what you're saying about NIL in these deals, it's not what people think it is. In fact, there are really not that many players that are getting much money. The few that are making headlines, but most of them are getting a little bit of money. But don't forget, when you're a student athlete, pretty much everything is paid for. Plus you get cost of attendance money. So spare me that ridiculous narrative that these student athletes are victims. They have opportunities that most people can only dream of. If they don't take advantage of them and they don't graduate, it's their own fault. Sua sponte, of your own accord. They love tattoos. They love covering themselves like paintings. Put sua sponte on your hand, on your foot. So every time you look at yourself, your hands, your feet, say, of my own accord. I have to do it myself. Again, Wimp Sanderson's great quote. How many of your players have graduated from Alabama that played basketball for you, Coach? As many as wanted to. God bless Wimp Sanderson for saying that, and every coach that says the same thing.
Well, Dean Smith only had one player who never graduated in all the years that he coached. Only one, which is, if you check the record, is vastly superior to that of the fella who just retired down in Durham.
Yeah.
The coach with the foulest mouth I've ever heard.
Yeah.
By the way,
Yeah.
I didn't know that the F word could be treated so creatively as
Yeah.
he did.
Yeah.
He's not a saint, trust me.
Yeah. And that month-long celebration was that ending of his career, the way God, he's a great coach. I like Coach K, but I don't think he was comfortable with that. But that was ridiculous. Okay. But Roy Williams, Coach K, Jay Wright, they're out of coaching, in my opinion. It's not because they're old, because they're not old. They're out because they don't like all this portraying the student athletes as poor little victims. You know what? That's the problem. Way too much nobody ever takes responsibility. You don't graduate, that is on you. Okay?
Jay Wright never has yet to have a player, even the ones that left early for the NBA.
Yeah.
He's never had a player who didn't come back and graduate. Every single one of them.
Yeah.
He got out of this business for one reason, and that was he did not like the transfer portal and NIL combined. He saw that and said, I don't want anything to do with this at all.
Yeah.
And he did it. And there's going to be more coaches who are going to do that.
Yeah.
Derek Mason just took a sabbatical from football.
Yeah.
What's that all about? The guy is a terrific coach.
He is.
He made the mistake of going to Vanderbilt, which, Vanderbilt is a coach firing looking for a place to happen, except in everything but baseball.
2-minute warning,
bowling.
but yeah. Let me say this real quick. You're at bowling national champions. Most often, folks, we see the face of Christ in the least among us, and go out and help people with the expectation of getting nothing in return. Don't give to get, give to give, and don't be a snowplow parent. Give your kid a shovel. Let them figure it out. When they're 18 or 19, if you hadn't taught them enough and they don't have that foundation, they're going to have to figure it out eventually. The sooner, the better. But friends, I'm with you. Jay Wright, he's a young guy. He's only 60. He's going to resurface. And I'm going to tell you what, I don't want college football to be left to the Lincoln Rileys and all these hipster coaches, that wear the long sleeve T-shirt thing with the hoodie on it on the sidelines. Cliff Kingsbury, Lincoln Riley, they come to mind. They don't coach defense. They're all this me. Yeah, they're just this me generation of people. Caleb Williams winning the Heisman. Look, when Peyton got robbed in 97, that was bad. The fact that Stetson Bennett IV didn't win the Heisman this year, and Caleb Williams and his fingernails with all the vulgar stuff on there, and they thought it was funny, that's going to ruin the Heisman.
I agree.
And I'm going to tell you something. Those people out there that don't know what an Eagle Scout is, that's the greatest thing you can achieve, in my opinion, in the civilian world. If someone's an Eagle Scout, that's like saying, they're up for the Heisman. Honor, character, integrity, the life, the way, and the light. That's the bottom line. And friends, I love having you on here. Folks, check Franz out. We're out of time. GatorbaitMedia.com. He's on the Buddy Martin Show Monday through Thursday nights, 9 p.m. Eastern. Franz Beard is perhaps the world's most interesting man, along with Frank Duffy. But great show, everybody. We're out of here.